I know a few good stories. They take place in a corner of America that might seem familiar, yet still manages to surprise. The settings are spectacular, the characters compelling, the action exciting, the plot lines unpredictable. I'm Tom Richardson. Join me as I explore New England's great outdoors, from Candlewood Lake, Connecticut to Caribou, Maine, from the beaches of Cape Cod to the peaks of New Hampshire's White Mountains. The stories are waiting. Let's live them on Explore New England. Explore New England is brought to you by your New England Ford dealers, your local REI co-op. REI believes a life outside is fundamental to a life well lived. Campers Inn RV, the RVer's trusted resource. And visitnewengland.com. Throughout New England, rivers big and small have driven the course of history, moving people and products, facilitating commerce and migration. The Connecticut, the Kennebec, the Penobscot, and the Merrimack are all well known as mighty waterways that shaped our region as they flowed through Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. Only Rhode Island seems left out of the picture. Or was it? As I recently learned, the Blackstone River, which flows for some 45 miles from Worcester, Massachusetts to Providence, where it becomes the tidal Seekonk River, played a key role in launching the industrial era in America. And I suppose that makes it famous, or infamous, depending on your point of view. In 1793, English-born Samuel Slater helped establish the first water-powered textile mill in the country on the banks of the Blackstone, using mechanical engineering skills he had acquired in his home country. Other mills soon followed, popping up along the Blackstone and other rivers as the technology spread through New England. The Blackstone of the 1800s looked very different than the river of today, as I saw firsthand on a canoe trip with Mike LaFond of the Blackstone Valley Tourism Council. After meeting at the new Central Falls Landing launch area, Mike and I set off upstream through a riverscape that seemed miles, if not centuries, removed from the surrounding urban sprawl of Central Falls, Lincoln, and Cumberland.
The Blackstone River is approximately 45 miles between the city of Worcester and the city of Providence. It dumps right off into the Narragansett Bay through the Seekonk River.
Okay, so it basically becomes the Seekonk River.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm. And is that when it becomes, is that where it starts to be tidal?
Yes, it is.
And so this stretch that we're on right here between the two dams, how long is that?
That's approximately 3 miles between the hydro dam right there at Broad Street in Cumberland to the Route 122 Mendon Road bridge up in Cumberland-Lincoln line.
The Blackstone's industrial past led to yet another notable chapter in American transportation history. Beginning in 1825, a canal was dug alongside much of the Blackstone to allow the transport of goods between Worcester and Providence. A series of 49 locks were created to deal with the changing elevation, the canal boats pulled by oxen and horses. The trip from Worcester to Providence took 2 days. Right, and so that barge, like that whole canal barge system, how long was that in place for?
That was in place for approximately 20 years. Then once the railroad was invented, that was pretty much taken over, because the river, some years it rides extremely high, and then there's other years where it rides extremely low.
So it was kind of undependable.
That's right.
You didn't know if you could get the goods up or downstream, depending on the water levels, right?
Definitely, and with railroad, it was more dependable.
Now, there's also a riverboat that operates like a European style canal boat or something that operates on this river too.
Yes, it does. There's actually 2 of them. One that you can rent to stay in, which is the Samuel Slater, And the second one is the Explorer. They have right now down in East Providence.
Okay. Do those canal boats operate on this stretch of the
Yes,
river?
it does.
Okay. And you can stay overnight on them?
On the Samuel Slater.
Nice.
It's a nice little B&B, and it's all operated by the Tourism Council.
Today, wildlife abounds along the heavily wooded banks of the river, as well as in the river itself. On my trip with Mike, we encountered great blue heron, egrets, a kingfisher, a red-tailed hawk, and even a yellow-crowned night heron. Mike has also seen a bald eagle along this stretch of river. Additionally, several species of fish can be found in the Blackstone, including largemouth bass, pickerel, carp, sunfish, and even trout. It's a natural wonderland for paddlers of all types and abilities, and the Blackstone River Tourism Council is helping to make more people aware of the river's value as a recreational resource.
Blackstone Valley Tourism Council started in 1985. It was started by our president, Bob Billington. He's still with us today, still the leader of our organization. And he, at the beginning, was kind of just a one-man show. Like, he was a one-man force, and he saw the resources that Blackstone Valley had, the history that Blackstone Valley had, the outdoor recreation that it had, but he noticed that there wasn't a planned promotion for this area. So he started with that, and it's grown over this time to what we are today, to an organization that is internationally award-winning for our sustainable tourism developments, and we've grown into all of these different facets of our organization. Our mission is to inspire sustainable tourism in the area. So we work in a lot of different areas with our local governments on certain projects, sustainable tourism development, environmental education. We work on cultural and historic preservation. So we have our hand in a lot of different things, and all of that comes together to really showcase the wonderful place that Blackstone Valley is. A lot of the efforts to get kids out on the river, I'd say probably started in 1993. That was when we launched our educational vehicle. The Explorer is what we call it. It's a boat, it's a 40-passenger boat that we have here. It's usually right along the Blackstone, but we actually, the Blackstone River, but we actually move it around Blackstone Valley quite a bit. And that is our key piece of equipment for environmental education. So we bring school-age children down here. We cater our programs to the age and the class that's there, but we do water quality testing. We teach about turbidity. We teach about all these other different things, and we've been doing that for 28 years, and just recently we launched our kayak education program. So specifically here in Central Falls, where we are right now, Central Falls Landing, we have the youth of this city come down so that they can access this river by boat. We're teaching them kayak safety, rowing techniques, and just getting them out to have better access to this amazing resource that's in their backyard.
While the Blackstone River serves as an inviting urban paddling venue, Providence area mountain bikers will find a home at Lincoln Woods State Park in Lincoln. I visited the park on a midsummer afternoon and met up with REI Co-op Local Experiences instructor Greg Klim. So Greg, tell me about Lincoln Woods State Park.
Okay, Lincoln Woods is basically a few miles outside of Providence, located in Lincoln, Rhode Island. It's about 627 acres of property, a bunch of multi-use trails. We have mountain biking, they have kayaking at the pond, there's horseback riding, a lot of walking trails around the area, and it's really kind of a great venue for everything. There's about 16 miles of trails total. You know, they change from time to time. And you find trails that are on no map a lot of times, so you kind of every time you go out, it's a new experience, to say the least.
So we got a little bit of a steep section here, Greg. How would you attack this line right here?
Okay, so a lot of times when we come to an area like this, it's very much like if you're kayaking or canoeing on a river or something like that, you scout it out. It's better to scout something than to go into it blind, because you never know what's on the other side. So with something like this, there are actually two tracks that I can see. There's one off to the right that goes to the right of this big rock right here. And that's pretty much, and then you're gonna cut back to the left a little bit, and then you got a pretty straight shot all the way down. You got a couple little rocks, but the bikes are built to take that hit. The other path is to the left, probably between those two rocks, or actually go over the rock, and then you've got a straight shot after that. So one of the other features in Lincoln Woods is all these glacial erratics or boulders, and it's one of the premier places for bouldering, which is basically climbing up the rocks without any ropes or anything like that.
No protection or anything?
No, the only protection you have is you have these crash pads we put on the ground, and REI actually has a lot of classes. We do a lot of classes down here in bouldering, and it's a lot of fun.
So they'll just like climb up this
Over
thing?
vertical, yeah.
Oh my God.
It literally, they literally, see, you can see the grips.
Oh yeah, right, the
Right
chalk
here.
marks,
Yep.
right?
And you definitely use basically a climber's chalk, which is like an alcohol-based chalk that we use, and it's pretty wild. So this is Sunset Rock. It overlooks Only Pond. It's kind of like one of the favorite stopping areas we have during our classes. We always come here and do like a photo op and stuff like that, and people just like to take a break here. Sometimes we'll do lunch here if it's really nice. It's got a really great view of the beach, both inlets on both sides and around the corner. And it's just a really peaceful place.
Tell you, this park is it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's so close to downtown Providence.
It is. It's as I said, I didn't know about it until I started working for REI, and we started doing classes down here, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know, it is a gem. It really is pretty cool.
A few weeks after sampling the mountain bike trails at Lincoln Woods State Park, I returned to the Providence area for another river experience. Similar to the Blackstone, the Wunasquatucket River has seen a lot of changes since Rhode Island was settled in the 1600s, and especially since the industrial era began in the early 1800s.
This river actually is an American heritage river because of its role in the American Industrial Revolution. And it was one of the first places in the country, along with the Blackstone River, where all the textile mills were set up. And the river is created or lies such that there's so much of a drop in such a short area that damming is very easy to do. And so there's factories all along the river. And in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of pollution in this river. And by the time the revolution was mostly over, like in the 1970s and 1980s, it was so degraded that people just didn't want to have anything to do with it. We've worked really hard to try to restore the entire river. So restore the habitat use on the river, restore the water quality, restore the ways that people connect to it, building a lot of park spaces and a greenway and a bike path. And we've made this river into a real asset for the community instead of that horrible wasteland that it once was.
The Wunasquatucket River Watershed Council has been working to restore and enhance the river since the early 90s, and Alicia was excited to show me the river firsthand, starting in the Olneyville section of Providence. All right, Alicia, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
The Wunasquatucket is actually a name that the Narragansett Indians gave to the river. It's an Algonquin word, and it means where the tide ends. And it really refers to the quality of the river as a meeting place. You know, when the Native Americans were using this as their primary summer camp area, they would just get together where the tide ends, because that was a great place to camp and trade. And that really refers to the place where the river bends and Water Place Park is currently.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so that was the Great Salt Cove, and very productive, easy eating, easy trading, easy meeting.
An ideal spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonder what they would have thought of it now.
We do talk to the Narragansett tribe a lot, and we really respect whatever they want to use the river for. You know, they still love it and revere it as the ancient place that they've used as kind of their highway. It was their canoe highway to go up and down this part of the state. The Wunasquatucket River Watershed Council was incorporated in 2001, and actually we are an offshoot of another project that was called the Wunasquatucket Greenway Project that was started at another nonprofit organization called the Providence Plan. And the purpose at that time was to improve quality of life for the people who lived in Olneyville. And the folks who were heading up that project discovered that there was a river running through Olneyville that they figured, well, if we can do something around this river to improve the river and improve things around the river, we can probably make life better for a lot of people. And they were absolutely right. So we incorporated in 2001 as a separate organization because all of Olneyville became designated as a brownfield showcase community. And there was so much activity and cleanup happening that we needed to be our own organization at that point. So now our mission is to create positive environmental, social, and economic change by revitalizing the Wunasquatucket River, its parks, its greenway, and its communities.
So Alicia, tell me about the pocket park right here.
This is a park that the Wunasquatucket River Watershed Council built with neighbors so that there would be access to the river right in this downtown section of river here.
Okay.
And we're just redesigning this whole downtown stretch of greenway bike path. So there's going to be a separated bike lane up there, and just a little bit beyond the park up here, it's going to be a new fully accessible canoe and kayak launch.
Oh, no kidding. So they're going to actually, what are they going to make steps down to?
No, it'll be a ramp.
Oh, a ramp, really?
Yep, a ramp straight down. So anybody, you know, despite whatever access needs they have, will be able to get down there. These factories have been here since like the 1860s.
So this was an old factory?
Yeah, everything along this river was industrialized. This was all about factories and textiles.
Does the Watershed Association, do you organize river cleanups?
We organize so many river cleanups. We have about 1,000 volunteers that come out and do cleanups with us every year. We start off in April with a big cleanup of the watershed. We'll have people just come out on a nice day, usually around Earth Day, and people will be on the banks and they'll be in the river and they'll just be pulling junk out of the river and cleaning up the banks. But they follow the whole greenway, and we do cleanups, and not just cleanups, but beautification projects. So they'll do plantings, or maybe they'll build benches or birdhouses. And you know, people are coming out pretty much all season from April through November.
The Wunasquatucket River Watershed Council often hosts kayak trips, which are a great and safe way to get to know the river. If you're thinking of paddling on your own, be aware that the river is tidal for several miles and can be unnavigable at low water. Also note that heavy rain events can create dangerous conditions for several days, so check river flow levels before launching.
Well, Tom, here we are in downtown Providence.
Wow, a different world in just a matter of minutes.
I know, it's amazing. And this basin that we're in is Water Place Park, and it's kind of the center of a meeting place of the city. And you know, we're famous for water fire here in Providence, and the event takes place right here. This is the basin, this is where everything is happening. It also goes up and down the river.
Being able to see the city from the water, from the river, is really an interesting perspective.
It's amazing. I love it. And people, this is our most popular paddle, is coming up through the city to that nice area that we just came from. They just can't believe that the city has this to offer. And the perspective is so different from the water, just like you said, Tom.
Wasn't a lot of this river like under freight yards and
It
stuff
was.
at one
This,
point?
this was famous for being the widest bridge in the world before they daylighted the river.
Really?
Yeah, they just covered it over completely for a long time.
Like right where we are right now? This
Right
was
where
all
we
covered over too?
Yeah, it was totally covered over right here.
No kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was only daylighted like in the 90s.
That's amazing. I mean, that's not that long ago.
I know, and it's so sad that they didn't recognize the river as a resource, because at that point it was just a dumping ground in a wasteland, so nobody wanted to see it. So Tom, I just wanted to point out that there's a really cool marker here that only people from the river can see, that show the stages of the river at various points in flooding. So this low line here is the 100-year flood, which is a pretty low-level flood. And frankly, we get those pretty frequently at this point, so it should be called like the 30-year flood or the 20-year flood. And as climate change gets worse, we're gonna see that very frequently. But if you look all the way up at the top, the hurricane of 1938 reached water levels all the way up there, and the entire city was flooded downtown. Like you could, swim through the plaza where City Hall was.
That was an amazing storm. I mean, that killed a lot of people.
It did, and that was one of the reasons that we have a hurricane barrier now. So Tom, we're at a really interesting junction on the river right here. We're at the spot where the Wunasquatucket meets the Wunasquatucket River right over there. And when those two rivers come together right downstream of here, we are forming the Providence River. So technically, this is the end of the Wunasquatucket and the beginning of the Providence River.
Having nearly reached the hurricane barrier and the gateway to Narragansett Bay, Alicia and I turned our kayaks around and retraced our course through downtown Providence and north along the Wunasquatucket. Thus concluded my exploration of the Providence area by kayak, canoe, and mountain bike, including a look at two rivers that are in the process of being revived and appreciated after decades of being treated as afterthoughts and eyesores, and in one instance, even hidden from the light of day. It all speaks to the resiliency of nature and the will of people who see value in connecting other people to wild natural places. And you can see it for yourself just outside Providence.